Thank you guys for joining in today. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to present here and share my thoughts around Kotlin Multiplatform. So I'll start with my small introduction and about my organization. So my name is Mohit Sharma. I've been uh, a mobile app developer for more than 10 years. Currently, I'm associated with MongoDB, working as a developer associate for Realm. So if you haven't heard about Realm, it's an open source embedded object database that helps you build uh, offline first applications quickly. I think so. That's enough of the promotion which I had to do. Let's jump down to the talk now. So today, I'm going to talk about Kotlin Multiplatform. When you heard of Kotlin Multiplatform, this will, give you a thought that is it another cross-platform platform which helps you build mobile application around iOS, Android, and other platforms? But before you go to any conclusions, um, I would like you to take you back to the background of the mobile development, and from there onwards, we'll try to see whether is it a very same cross-platform development or it has something new to offer. So, mobile app development has been there for approximately more than a decade now, and since the early days, like I've been privileged enough to be since the starting of this journey, and I see that since early days there has been a lot of efforts to solve one problem. That one problem was to have one code base that could help us to build and run applications on all platforms. Earlier it was Windows, iOS, Android. But then, efforts have been made, but why these efforts have been made, it is also interesting to see. One of the primary reasons which any business user will understand is that, you know, it has a cost implication because there are many platforms, so more developers are required to build apps on different platforms. But when you come to the developer side, then it will be code maintenance, code issues, and all those stuff. So it is obvious that let's try to synchronize things as much as possible. Let's try to share as much things as possible so that development cycle can be decreased, and the development cost can be reduced. Some of the platforms which you can see here, uh, PhoneGap, Cordova, Ionic, these were the pretty famous ones. But instead of solving that one problem, they made our life a bit more complicated. Some of the problems which I would remember from my experience was from a user perspective, it was very hard for him to understand whether it's an iOS application or an Android application. Because if you have built it with one particular style sheet or design theme, it will behave in that manner. The components or the framework doesn't have the capability at that point of time to switch based on the device itself. So it was a bit confusing for the user. From a developer perspective, performance was a very big concern. If you have been in the mobile industry for a while, you will understand. You would have heard at some point of time the word of 60 FPS. The platforms was buggy. It has a lot of issues, especially when you're trying to deal with the underlying hardware. Let's say, for example, camera or GPS. Support was also a bit hard to find, but things have changed over the period of time, especially when React Native and Flutter came into the picture. And it was very obvious because these two products were supported by very two big organizations, Facebook and Google itself. So if we try to summarize, or if I'll try to summarize the problem, I would say that it has been primarily around one place, the UI interaction or design. So if I'll break down the problem again, what is my core problem? I want to have a single code base. Why do I want to have a single code base? Because I see that 70% of my application code has only logic. The logic can be business logic or the logic of how to manipulate data. And the rest 30% of it is the UI. So that means the UI is the only moving part, and it is more prone to bugs or issues with respect to the platform. So why not we build something that we have all the common things in one common module? That common thing could be our business logic and data, and there could be some provisioning around the platform itself that could expose this to the native platforms, Android, iOS, and others, so that you can write your UI specific code there. That is what Kotlin Multiplatform is all about. Since this track is specifically going around mobile development, I'll be further digging down into Kotlin Multiplatform for Mobile. That's called KMM. But in general, I would like to say that KMM has a lot more to offer. Kotlin Multiplatform has a lot more to offer. It offers support for web-based platforms with JavaScript. If you want to build native apps for the Mac OS, Linux, or Windows, you can do that. And it is also has good support for variables like watchOS. So now let's get started and see how to build the Kotlin multi-platform application. Building Kotlin multi-platform application is very simple. Not much of an effort is required if you're starting from scratch. What you need to do is, if you're using IntelliJ based IDE for your development, you can simply go and install the KMM plugin. With this KMM plugin, it will help you to set up your base project very quickly and simply. Once the plugin is installed, it is very simple. Just simply go to the project template and select the KMM template and move ahead. Moving ahead, you will realize that there are very basic configurations required, like name of your project. What would be the package name? Where would you like to save? Minimum OS version for Android. What would be the dependency manager for iOS? And two specific things. One, what would be the name of the Android app and the iOS app? We normally keep it default. These are the name of the Android or iOS specific code bases. Once the project setup is completed, it's almost there. Now, the next problem which comes into the play is, how do I run my app? So for this, with the plugin itself, you can run both iOS and Android app from the IntelliJ itself. So you don't have to, switch ID or switch and go to export just for running the application. In some of the cases, in most, when you are writing some specific things related to the iOS, at that point of time, you will have to go to export. But for just running application, it's not required at all. This is the application which we will be building during this presentation, which will just simply returns on what platform and what OS version the app is running on. Now let's look at the project structure of the base project which we have created using our template. As I mentioned you earlier, regarding the problem, you can see here that it has a shared module wherein you will be writing all your shared logic, be it interaction with the data or retrieving the data. And then you will have two separate modules wherein you will be writing platform specific code, iOS and Android. To make this kind of changes, we have made certain changes to the Gradle file itself. I didn't do it myself. The plugin did it for myself. But it's always nice to review what changes has been done on your behalf so that you understand the value of it. So few things which primarily I have noticed were that the Kotlin multi-platform plugin has been added. Then the support or getting the CocoaPods dependencies for the iOS, that plugin has been added. And we have defined our Android app as a library project. Suppose that we have to define on which platforms our Kotlin multi-platform will be available. So on the top, you'll see Android mentioned. It tells the plugin that, hey, this app has to be exported to Android as well. And the lower, you will see it. I have mentioned iOS. Once you have defined the platform, you also want to tell what way, from where you can find the source code and what would be its corresponding dependencies. Now, before jumping into the actual code, how do we build such kind of applications? I would like to explain or go into one more concept. Let's say, for example, when you're writing your business logic and you want to use some underlying platform specific API. I'm talking about the cases wherein you want to make change request for underlying platform specific API for your business logic, not for your UI. Okay, so for this, there could be two ways of implementing. The traditional way, we can define, an interface, and we can write its implementation in the platform specific code. Or Kotlin has its own way of doing things. It's called actual and expect. So expect and actual declarations are the Kotlin mechanism for developing Kotlin multi-platform application that needs access for platform-specific APIs. With this common mechanism, you can clearly define that these needs application platform-specific API, so it becomes distinguished easily. That works for most of the Kotlin declarations, like functions, classes, interfaces, properties, annotations, etc. So this is how, on a high level, it does it. Let's see on the implementation level, how do we do it? So it is very simple. We define a expect. In this case, I'm trying to find a random number. And then on the Android side, I'll go and say, okay, I have my Java utils library from where I can get a UUID. Same goes with iOS. I have my NSUUID, which gives me a UUID string. Now let's try to move a little more into the Android side and try to see how it does it. So you remember our example, we were trying to get the platform version. So here we defined in this manner, we define expect class, say platform. When we go to the Android side, Android app place, we just define, okay, this will be the Android version. Likewise, we did it for the iOS as well. Now moving down ahead and trying to access it on the view side. This is our activity. In our activity, it becomes really simple. We say we try to access the class platform and its property platform value, and then simply accessing passing that value to our text view. Likewise, let's see it on the iOS as well. We inside our view, we defined a text, and we are simply passing the platform value from it. This is how simple it is just to build and a basic hello world application with Kotlin multi-platform. But eventually you will also realize that you don't have much things like this will not be good enough for you when you're trying to build a full-fledged application. In that case, you can use some third-party libraries like Ktor, which is primarily used for networking. It is as stable and as equivalent as retrofit, I would say, but it's just that most of the people haven't explored it because retrofit was giving most of the answers, and it has a very good community support. But I would recommend you, even if you're not using Kotlin multi-platform, you should explore Ktor. For serialization, so serialization, I meant to say, when you're reading a JSON and you want to create an object, you can use Kotlin X serialization. That's also very clean and very similar to JSON. And at the end, if you want to use some database, local database, you can use Rel. Sadly, you cannot use SQLite for now because it doesn't support Kotlin multi-platform, or you'll have to write two different application, one for SQLite or Room and another for core data. So I would suggest you can move ahead with Realm. It also has Kotlin multi-platform API. Few of the advantages and disadvantages, in my opinion, would be, I'll start with advantages first and then I'll go into disadvantages. The platform itself tries to enforce the principle of suppression of concern, because it tries to enforce you that the UI logic should be written in the UI specific app module, and the business logic should be written in the shared module. This in turn improve the testability of your code as well. So you don't have to made some additional efforts around how to increase the testability of the code, which is one of the primary concerns when you're trying to build a mobile application. Secondly, you use Kotlin itself. So you don't have to learn any new language. So React or Dart, you don't have to learn that. It's by default using Kotlin. So it's not a problem. When you compare with respect to Swift, because the iOS developers will have to learn Kotlin, but for them also, I see that the learning curve is very low, because the programming paradigm of both the languages is almost similar with very minor differences. The best of the benefit in I see is that there are no bridges. So if you want to access the native components, let's say for example Google Maps or GPS or camera, you don't have to bother about whether I'll have any of the performance issues or not. You don't have to bother. It's very simple, because at the end of the day, you're writing the native code for that. So performance issues are very less. Commitment is really low. You don't have to start um, creating the KMM project from the very scratch. You can easily integrate it into any existing project. So you can get started with very easily, and you can remove it also very easily. So you don't have to make a very longer commitment. You can start with a very basic application, and as you move forward, you can move ahead. Learning curve is very small. In my opinion, what I've used with KMM, I realized that the learning curve is very small. You don't have to bother that much. Now let's move down to some of the disadvantages. One of the biggest disadvantage you can see, or people will mention you, that the APIs are still in alpha. Yes, I agree, and it's a very big thing. But with Realm, we are moving ahead with the alpha because we see the value of it. And as far as I remember, last week, JetBrains has announced that they are planning to go beta in spring of 2022. So you can see that the active phase of development is still going on. So you don't have to worry in that sense. If you're trying to migrate an existing project to Kotlin multi-platform, the Gradle configuration is kind of a pain, because things are not very clear. And since it's a new platform, although it has a good community support, people respond very easily, but still, it has very low number of folks who are responding it. So setting up Gradle configuration is a kind of a pain. That's one of my personal experience. Another thing which I have realized, that when I was trying to propose this solution, um, few of my folks from the iOS team, they were a bit hesitant, because at the end of the day, they'll have it's a more steep curve for them as compared to the Android developer. So you might kind of see a small kind of a resistance from their side. Thank you. And that's all I have from my side. I'll be open to questions. If anyone wants to connect, you can also reach out to me on Twitter at Code with Mohit. Thank you.